when you're starting out, it's capital's always the problem, and how much can you do. Now, typically, HMOs, especially when we're doing the conversion and development, yes, there is that slightly larger capital outlay, but when you can use that strategy effectively, and okay, you need a lot of cash, but maybe only over a 6-month period, when you can kind of refinance, pull most of that out again and go again, it's a much quicker strategy to build. Rent to rents, as we've touched on, tried that. For me, it didn't work. You need to own to build wealth. And the same with buy to let. Unless I'm getting multiple units out of something, it seems quite risky.
There's been a big debate about whether you should be investing in the north or the south when it comes to property investment. Well, today, to help settle that debate, I'm joined by Adriana Cafasso from Cafasso Developments. Adriana, why don't you introduce yourself?
Perfect. So yeah, I'm Adriana. I am based in the Northeast. I've been investing up there myself for the past few years, and a lot for my clients as well. And yeah, this is kind of a back and forth conversation that people are having, north versus south. Yeah.
So before we get into it, just a little bit of background about yourself, why you've actually now started helping clients and helping yourself, investing in HMOs in the north. What actually got you interested in properties?
Yeah, so I think property's always been something that I've wanted to get into, but it was just figuring out the way to do it. Typically, you've got the buy-to-let route. It's a slow burner, and over the years, it kind of gets harder and harder to make that work. Yes, you can still do it successfully, and in the north as well, you've got more of a market, but what draws you in is that kind of high return and high cash flow, similar to the way that you guys have built your portfolio over the years. Get that high return, get the cash flow, release equity on the refinance to be able to keep building faster and faster. So that's something that we found works really well, particularly in the north of the UK. There's a lot of opportunity to do that. Yields are really strong, and also rents are just massively increasing year on year as well. So that's what brought us to the strategy. And there's a lot of opportunity that unfortunately we can't take on everything ourselves, which then led us to then start doing opportunities for clients as well. And a lot of remote investors, that we've found also working together. Yeah.
So would you say you looked at buy-to-lets, rent-to-rents, service accommodation, and then you found your niche within the HMO market? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're starting out, it's capital's always the problem, and how much can you do. Now, typically, HMOs, especially when we're doing the conversion and development, yes, there is that slightly larger capital outlay, but when you can use that strategy effectively, and okay, you need a lot of cash, but maybe only over a 6-month period, when you can kind of refinance, pull most of that out again and go again, it's a much quicker strategy to build. Rent to rents, as we've touched on, tried that. For me, it didn't work. You need to own to build wealth. And the same with buy to let. Unless I'm getting multiple units out of something, it seems quite risky. Yeah.
So I know you're originally from Manchester, but you've moved to the northeast around Newcastle, and this is where you actually specialise in. Why did you actually choose the northeast of England to implement HMOs?
Yeah, I mean, it actually comes from, I was a student there, so I've been up there now for the past 8 years, and my plan was after university kind of to move away, but then I started my property journey, and I knew the market. I knew how particularly hard it was for us to find properties, and we were looking to get houses, whether that be when we were all moved out as professionals or when we were students. If you saw something, whether it was your ideal property or not, you put that deposit down and you did it. The demand is really there. And since then, I've just seen the area go from strength to strength. The purchase price makes sense. Our valuation figures made sense. And I'm so glad I didn't walk away from that opportunity. Yield is a really important thing to look at, I think. For us in the north, when you're trying to see the difference between how much is coming in each month and the value of the property, there's so much opportunity there to kind of keep building that. I think we're sitting at a gross of about 12 to 14%, so more than double of most areas, I would say.
Previous week we were at a Rightmove presentation where we had the head of data sales there, and he actually mentioned Newcastle is the hottest spot at the moment, from what the data at Rightmove is showing. Now, what have you seen over the past few years for the reasons why people are now starting to invest in the North?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it was almost like that talk was set up for me. Being there, everybody talking about why the North East, house prices are the strongest year on year, rental increases strongest year on year, and so is demand and even capital appreciation. So that makes sense, and we're just seeing that happen in person. Now, there's a lot of different factors, and specifically, you have to understand the North East, I think, to successfully invest in it. The football club, that's a massive reason as to why investment things have happened there. The Saudis bought it, so that's put a lot of money into the area. The football club's gone up. They've also been investing around the area for years before buying the football club, and that's really had an impact on regeneration things happening. So now there's a lot of cities, because they were forgotten cities when everything happened with all the coal mine industries that being shut down. The North was a really depressed area. Since then, we've come on strength to strength. And, I can be in what our cities are now and see the multi-million pounds regeneration investment, companies relocating, lots of foreign investment coming in. It's such an exciting market to be in. And, typically, specifically from like a HMO perspective, a high yield can almost make a lower value. And as our properties improve and increase, it brings strength to the market. There's nowhere near saturation in the North, I don't feel.
Yeah. How important do you think local knowledge is for investing in the North, and in particular the North East where you're based?
Yeah, it's huge. I always kind of give people the example that tomorrow you could go online and you could put property for sale in the North East. More than likely, you're going to find a large house that you can make a 6-bed HMO all en suite. And naturally, you're going to want to go for, oh my gosh, this is £80,000, amazing. Yes, you might find a deal like that, but the chances are it might not be in an area that is going to give you that longevity of tenant. So how I always phrase it to people is, it's my full-time job to know the area and know where we're investing, and to know those hotspot city centre locations that are going to give you, yes, an amazing return, and you're going to buy and you're going to create a brilliant product, but also you're going to get that tenant type. There's no point having something if you're not able to let it out for the next 10, 15 years back to back.
No, I agree. Now, you tend to see properties as cheap as 10, 15K in the North East. I was literally just going through today. Allsop had an auction. I was looking at some of the lots that actually sold. I saw a lot. It was a derelict bungalow, terraced house, and I think it sold at 25,000. So why do properties go for such a low value? And I know the ones that you invest in typically are 6 figures plus.
Yeah, I think a massive part of it is the North East is a really vast. It's vast. There's between each kind of town. Sometimes there's almost nothing. So it's understanding those areas. Now, yes, there's still the opportunity to kind of buy low and buy at those good prices. But the street price, the ceiling price hasn't always caught up. The way that I kind of always look at everything, and particularly why we're not necessarily selling a lot of what we're buying, we're holding it to retain, and yes, getting our great return on it, but everything's for the future, is because, everything kind of works up the country. So you look at London, when London had the boom, prices skyrocketed. Then it went to Birmingham, then it went to Manchester, and Manchester's kind of settled off a bit. Then it hit Leeds, and now Newcastle's kind of like in that whirlpool of where everything's happening, but there's so much more to come. But it hasn't necessarily reached everywhere that our baseline prices are 100k plus, for example.
So do you think there's a north-south divide where historically over decades, even potentially centuries, where money that's actually raised from taxpayers is being invested more in the south than the north?
I think so. I think when we're looking at the stats and what's happening and where people are investing, the conversations I'm having, typically a lot of London investors are not so excited by the London market anymore. I get it. You've got your appreciation, you've got your capital, and I think it's almost, it makes sense if you can spread across the both. Why not? But I think particularly if you're looking for a return, if you're looking to kind of see that benefit over the long term, and again, that lower barrier to entry point, then the North has definitely got kind of all the excitement there to be doing that successfully.
Following Brexit, there were some announcements of a free port within the northeast, I think around Teesside, and prices jumped, I think like maybe 20% or so. Have you seen the benefits of Brexit, or just since Brexit, more investment actually coming now to the northeast?
Yeah, big time. So we're getting, particularly one of the areas that I'm invested in, and a lot of our clients are, Sunderland. There's a tremendous amount of investment coming to the area. There's a lot of foreign investment coming in. So we're now going to have the largest film studios in Europe. They are aiming for the Hollywood of Europe, but the northeast, and the cold weather is an interesting place. But yeah, it's insane. Like, even myself, it's classed as kind of over the water. I'm Newcastle originally. So as we've entered there more and been investing there more, you're just seeing, big big infrastructure going up, but also thousands of home developments, multi-million-pound developments. The government is so keen for investment, which I think is vital for investors like us. If you can have, we've got a lot of Article 4 there, but it's got the ability to be manipulated if you understand what the council are looking for, and you can deliver that high-end product, because the whole aim is getting rid of the not so great HMOs where living standards are poor and people aren't looked after, and bringing that new set of kind of wealth into the area and providing young working professionals an exciting place, somewhere nice to live, that they want to kind of stay, they want to spend money in the area. Keeping massive investment in the city centres is the main focus. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of kind of encouragement from the government to invest and keep doing what we are doing in the northeast.
So currently you're investing around Newcastle, Sunderland, surrounding areas. Would you venture out into other areas in the northeast? And if you were going to do so, what would be the key characteristics you would look out for you to make that decision? Yeah,
so there's a couple of different areas that we are kind of across that span. Now, typically for us, it's all about stress testing. So now obviously we own our sales and letting agents in-house. We've got a lot of access to data. We can stress test a lot of our investments. But the main thing that you've got to look for is, well, what drives, it's not just about what's going to drive a new development scheme, for example, and first-time buyers. We're typically looking for what's going to drive young working professionals or working professionals to want to live in these shared accommodations. So, young professionals, they want to be close to life. They want to be close to transport. So it's all those things that play a massive role. And, we're getting new train lines, we're getting new development, things like that done. There's new metro lines being expanded. So there's kind of lots of areas. If you're on the ball and you have that kind of next set of knowledge, you can almost target those areas. But it's really important that you buy with knowledge, not just price-based, but kind of taking into accountability. Okay, how many HMOs are in this area? How many students are in this university? How many students are signed on for the next student year? Looking at all these things, or how many people are graduating, what companies are moving up. And that's, every time we go to a new area, it's all these factors that come into deciding if it makes sense to then do that.
No, I think that's basically hits it right on the head there. Now, I actually had a friend who decided he wanted to switch from buying properties in the south and to go up north, and he literally just went into auction and he purchased 40 properties, and he thought, well, the rents are okay and the yields will be great. But he ended up having issues where he'll renovate a property, but the next day someone would actually break in, the boiler would be gone, like pipes would be leaking. In the end, he actually got rid of most of them because I think he didn't really understand the area. And from what he actually said, it could be literally in the northeast, it's a case of you can have one road, which is perfectly fine, and you just go 2 roads up, and you wouldn't want to walk down there, let alone invest in that area. Is that something which is correct?
Yes, depending on the area. This is why it's almost so niche, and why I would always recommend, even, if you're not looking to partner with somebody to help you do it, but really come and spend some time around the different kind of city centre locations. And it's, price is not the only factor. In the south, if you can buy something that's cheap, instantly you're drawn to it. In the north, you have to look at all the other variables, because most of our houses are cheap. I mean, we're picking up prime location properties to convert into HMOs for 120 grand. And then you can buy something for 60, 70 grand that's going to kind of not give you very much, but headache back. So it's really, really important, that you know what area you're going into, you know exactly the tenant type that you're trying to get out on the other side, and exactly who's going to manage it, who's going to take care of it, who's going to be there for your maintenance, and kind of having that core power team, I would say, is probably, but the same with anything, the only way to successfully invest remotely is to have that core team.
Now, in terms of the investors that you're getting, investing within the northeast of England, is it a split between north or south, or are you finding more people from the south are coming up north? What's the sort of ratio between the two?
Yeah, I mean, most of my investors are remote, but they're not necessarily all southern based. I think that there probably is a split between them, but definitely, I think a lot of my networking and everything else also particularly comes from being in the south. And there's definitely that flurry of kind of seasoned investors. Sometimes I look at it more as investor type, not always the location of the investors, but particularly a lot of seasoned investors are still looking to transfer into investing in the northeast. And I think that is almost really important to consider. You know, they've done and tried and tested the southern market, but they almost want something a little bit more exciting now. You know, that low barrier to entry, that kind of quick ability to refinance and things like that. So yeah, there's a split, but
yeah. Now I think probably one of the final points is how investing was to me, like when we initially started off, was if you want to invest in the north, you'll get a great yield, but capital appreciation is a lot slower. And within the south, there used to be, your yield will be lower, but your capital appreciation will be great. Now, have you seen that change over the past few years?
Yeah, so I was reading a report the other day, and that went into it. The northeast has actually got kind of the highest year-on-year appreciation. So the same goes with the rents and the house prices, but we've also still got the highest year-on-year appreciation. Now, yes, obviously our prices are lower, so the way that kind of compounds, you're still not getting that in London in 5 years your house price might be, you know, you've got everything back and it's completely changed to a significant figure. But in terms of percentage-wise, we are hitting that mark, that year on year we're having kind of that bigger appreciation jump. So I definitely think there has been a shift, and I think it's just kind of natural that eventually it moves and works its way up the country. So it's, yeah, an exciting time to be investing.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, if you've enjoyed this, we're actually doing a collaboration with Adriana. We're taking the Elevate series up north. We're going to be having 2 events in Manchester this year, 2 events in Newcastle. The first event is actually going to be the 20th of March at the Gotham Hotel. If you want to attend, details are going to be in the description, and we hope to see you in the next video.